For Unit 2, we're going to be dealing with transformations. Let me highlight this word transformation. So start getting used to the instructions or the image of the figure using the given transformation. So transformation is where we're going to be looking in Unit 2. The whole Unit 2 is going to be about transformations. The first one we're going to be dealing with is translation. We're going to be covering 4 in total. So one of them is going to be called translation. I'm going to give you guys figures. We call those pre-image. I'm going to give you guys an image. In question number 1, you guys can see it's an image that has 4 sides. Question number 2 is it has 3 sides. What we're going to be doing for translation, that figure is not going to change the way it looks like. So for question number 1, the image that I get is going to be exactly the same thing. The only difference is going to be placement. I'm going to move the picture. Now, according to my instructions here, it says I'm going to move this 4 units to the left and 2 units down. So each of my vertices, what I'm going to do, I'm going to move it 4 to the left and 2 down. Let's take a look at one point, for example. Let's take a look at point G. We can see point G. I'm going to move it 4 to the left and 2 down. So my point G is going to move here. And originally in black, you guys see it's point G. Now, once I move it, let me use blue. Once I move it, I'm going to call this G prime. The little apostrophe, we call it prime. It doesn't matter which point I go for next. Let me look at point F. So we see point F. Let me move it 4 to the left and 2 down. And that's going to give me the point F prime. Let me do the same thing with E. Let me move it 4 to the left and 2 down. That gives me my point E prime. And for H, let me do it 4 to the left and 2 down. And that gives me my point H prime. All I do is I move the vertices. I move the corners. Now, let me just connect my dots. I'm just going to connect my points. And the image that I get should look exactly like the original. The only difference is placement. Now, when we're in a classroom for quizzes and tests, I will ask you, here, graph the image. I will give you guys a printed paper, and you guys will graph the image. For homework and for online teaching, I'm going to ask you for the coordinates of a specific point. For example, let's say I ask you to solve for G prime. Give me the coordinates of G prime. I just want you to give me the coordinates of that point only. We can see G prime in this case happens to be -3, +3. Like I said, I will be asking for homework. I'll be asking for a specific point. Just give me the coordinates of that point. For online teaching, I will be asking for one specific point as well during the quiz or test. Now, in person, I will be asking for the entire figure. Let me leave question number 2 alone. All we have to do on this one is move everything 1 to the right and 3 down. Now, as a matter of fact, let me do this really quick. 1 unit to the right and 3 down. That gives me my point F prime. Let me follow my G. I'm going to go 1 to the right and 3 down. And let me follow my point E, 1 to the right and 3 down. And that gives me the point E prime. I connect my points, and there's the image. They should look exactly the same. In black, we can see the original. And in blue, we can see the image after the transformation. Now, another way I'm going to talk about translation, it's easy when it is in words, as we did in question number 1 and question number 2. It's easy when we can see it in words, but I'm also going to give it to you in what we call notation. Now here, I'm saying it's going to be a translation, and I use x plus 2. My x value, if I think of the x-axis goes from left to right. So the x value is going to tell me whether I move to the left or to the right. Plus means move to the right, and minus means move to the left. So this figure, x plus 2, is telling me I'm going to move 2 spaces to the right. I'm going to move 2 units to the right. For the y value, if you look at the y-axis goes ups and down. So with the y value, I'm going to tell you whether you move up or down. In this case, down because it's minus. So x plus 2 means 2 to the right. Y minus 1 means 1 down. So do the same thing for each of your points. If I follow point F, let me go 2 to the right and 1 down. It's going to give me the point F prime. If I follow G, I'm going to go 2 to the right and 1 down. That gives me the point G prime. For E, 2 to the right and 1 down gives me the point E prime. And for D, 2 to the right, 1 down, that gives me the point D prime. I can connect my points. For homework, once again, I'm going to be asking for a specific point. Give me the coordinates of that point. For example, I could be asking, give me the coordinates of F prime. What I'm expecting from you guys is the point 4, 0. Don't forget that after the comma, when I type in coordinates for my homework, after the comma, there should be a space. And don't forget the parentheses as well. Looking at question number 4, this one, I'm going to be moving to the left. X minus 2, that means to the left. Y plus 3, that means up. So I'm moving everything 2 units to the left and 3 up. If I follow point S, let me go 2 to the left and 3 up. That gives me the coordinate S prime. If I follow T, 2 to the left and 3 up, that gives me T prime. If I follow the point R, 2 to the left and 3 up, that's R prime. I connect my points. My image should look exactly like the original, just moved. I moved the 2 to the left and 3 up. Another way I can give you guys translation is what we call displacement. Notice how here it said translation, and inside parentheses I have -1, 6. For notation, like I did in questions 3 and 4, I gave you something like x minus 1. Let's say I did that, x minus 1, y plus 6. Right? In questions 3 and 4, we saw it like this. What that meant was 1 to the left and 6 up. Now for displacement, notice how my -1, I write it with the sign included, x minus 1, right? I wrote it with the sign included. Notice my 6 on the y value is a positive 6. So if I write it in notation, I write y plus 6. So the way we're going to do this is as 1 to the left and 6 up. So let me follow a point. I'm going to follow point I. Looking at my point I, let me go 1 to the left and 6 up. That gives me the point I prime. If I look at my point J, let me go 1 to the left and 6 up. That gives me the point J prime. And the same thing with point H. 1 to the left and 6 up. That gives me my point H prime. So I connect my points, and there's my figure. So once again, that parentheses is basically telling me how am I going to move. Some books, sometimes in your homework, you might even see it. Instead of a parentheses, we like to use these little brackets. Later on, we're going to call those vectors. Vector displacement in this case. Looking at question number 6, this -4 on the x value, it just means I'm moving to the left 4 spaces. The -3 on the y value means I'm going down 3 spaces. So each point, let me move it 4 to the left and 3 down. So looking at my point R, I'm just going to follow a point. Let me follow my point R, 4 to the left and 3 down. That gives me the point R prime. Let me take a look at my point S. I'm going to go 4 to the left and 3 down, and that gives me the point S prime. Looking at Q, let me go 4 to the left and 3 down, and that gives me the point Q prime. I can easily graph it. For your homework, once again, I'm going to ask you for the coordinates of a specific point. I can give it to you in words, like we see in questions 1 and 2. I can give it to you in notation, like we see in questions 3 and 4, or I can give it to you as displacement, as we can see 5 and 6. So transformation could be many things. Now, translation, I'm just moving it. I'm just moving it sideways, up and down. Continue with our work. We're going to see something like this. Find the coordinates of the vertices of each figure after the given transformation. I'm asking for a translation. But notice how, in this case, to begin with, I'm going to write it in notation. Notation, I have like x and the y plus 2. Now, here, notice how on the x I have nothing. It's just x. That means I'm not moving sideways. I have y plus 2, so if I had to graph these, if I had an image, I'm not moving sideways, I'm just going 2 up. Now, for numerical reasons, let me find the coordinates. I'm just finding the coordinates of q prime. What it says, when it comes to x value, it says don't do anything to the x. Don't do anything to the x. When it comes to the y value, add 2. So for my coordinates of q prime, my x, I'm not going to do anything. On the y, let me add 2. Those are my coordinates. If I'm solving for r prime, don't do anything to the x. Just add 2 to y. And for s prime, my coordinates should be 0, -2. I mean 1, -2. Don't do anything to the x value. Just add 2 to the y. If I was to graph this, if I was to look at these directions and I had to graph and I had that graph, don't move sideways, just go 2 up. Let's take a look at question number 8. If I'm solving for w prime, I could be solving for v prime or u prime. When it comes to the x, add 1. When it comes to y, subtract 2. So for w prime, my coordinates will be -3, -1. On the x, I added 1. On the y, I subtracted 2. For v prime, my coordinates will be -4, +3. For u prime, my coordinates will be 0, 3. On the x value, I added 1. On the y value, I subtracted 2. If I'm looking at questions number 9 and 10, translations, 1 unit left and 1 unit down. Okay, so let me write this in notation, kind of like how I have it in questions 7 and 8. 1 unit to the left, I see that as x minus 1. And the reason why I'm writing it like this is because, x minus 1, that means on the x value, you just subtract 1. 1 unit down, so for the y, I'm going to go y minus 1. The reason why I'm writing it like this is because I remember y minus 1. So just subtract 1 on the y. So if I'm solving for h prime, the coordinates of h prime should be 1, -5. If I'm solving for I prime, my coordinates should be -1, -2. Remember, I have to subtract 1 from x and subtract 1 from y. If I'm solving for j prime, my coordinates should be 0, 2. For k prime, my coordinates should be 4, -1. Don't forget that on the homework, don't forget to type in the space after the comma. And you don't have to type in the letter. Just give me the coordinates. As an example, I'm asking for k prime. Give me the coordinates of k prime. This is all I'm expecting. You don't have to type k prime 4, -1. Just 4, -1. Just don't forget the space after the comma. All right, let's take a look at question number 10. 2 units to the right, let me write that as x plus 2. And the reason why I do this is because, I have to add 2 to x. It says 3 units up, let me rewrite that as y plus 3. So I'm going to add 2 to x, and I'm going to add 3 to y. If I'm getting the coordinates of L prime, my result should be -1, 0. If I'm getting K prime, my coordinates in this case should be 2, 3. And J prime, my coordinates should be 2, 0. For each x value, I added 2. For each y value, I added 3. That's simple. I can also give it to you guys as questions number 11 and 12. We call this displacement. My first value of 2, that means add 2 to x. And the second value of 2 means add 2 to y. The first number tells me what to do to x, and the second number tells me what to do to y, with the sign included. Both cases are positive 2, so that means add 2 to each number. So let's take a look. J prime. If I'm asking, give me the coordinates of J prime, again, you don't have to type in J prime, just type in the coordinates. Your answer in this case should be -2, 2. I added 2 to x, and I added 2 to y. If I'm looking at for the coordinates of I prime, my answer should be -1, 5. And for my coordinates of H prime, my answer should be 1, 1. I added 2 to x, I added 2 to y. Looking at question number 12, I'm going to add 6 to x, and I'm going to add 3 to y. So if I'm solving for u, the coordinates of u prime, my answer should be 1, -1. I added 6 to x, and I added 3 to my y coordinate. Now if I'm solving for v prime, remember add 6 to x, so I'm going to get 4, and to the y value add 3. If I'm solving for w prime, add 6 to the x value, add 3 to the y value, and that's it. Now, while you guys might be struggling a little, the struggle will be on writing a rule. On your homework, you will see it like this. If you have it when it's digital, when you have it on homework, it's easy to tell the difference of the colors, black and blue. Black is the original, blue is the one after the transformation. If you print it, you're going to get black and black unless you have a colored printer. But usually when I'm in a classroom, I don't have a colored printer, so I'm going to give it to you with black and black. You won't be able to use the color difference. Now, use the notation. Notice how on the blue, each of my letters has a little apostrophe. S prime, T prime, R prime. That's how you know that's the image that came after. In this case, the black is the original, and the blue is what comes after. We're dealing with translation today. So I will just tell you that I move this sideways, up and down. Follow a point. My case, I'm going to follow point S. It doesn't matter whether we follow S, T, or R. I'm going to follow S, and I want to know what do I need to do to go from S to S prime. Seems like I need to go 2 to the left. And then I need to go up 3. So I'm moving 2 to the left and up 3. Just to double check, I follow every point. 2 to the left, up 3. Let me follow T, 2 to the left, up 3. Notice how they all did the same. Move 2 to the left and up 3. The way we're going to write this for my homework, the way we're going to type this, it is a translation. I know we're dealing with translation today, so everything for today has to be translation. But later on, we're going to have other things besides translation. So let me start by writing translation. Make sure when you type it, capital T, because that's how we're starting the sentence. Now it moved 2 to the left. So the way I'm going to say 2 to the left, I'm just going to write x minus 2. The way I'm going to say 3 up, I'm going to write that y plus 3. Let me emphasize, though, that there's a couple spaces here. There's a space after the word translation, obviously, and there's a space after the comma. Those are the only spaces you should have. I do have to type in the word translation, though. You might not like to be typing translation a lot, but you do have to type in the word translation. So looking at number 14, follow a point. Once again, I start with black and finish with blue. The way you guys can see is that in blue, everything has an apostrophe. So Q prime, P prime, R prime. That's how I know the blue came after. I'm going to follow a point. Let me follow Q. This case, I go down 4 spaces. If you count how many squares I went down forward, and then I go 2 to the right. So the way I will do this, I will write translation x plus 2. First, I have to say it sideways. I went 2 to the right, so that's why x plus 2. And then y minus 4. 4 down. So 4 to the right, 2 to the right and 4 down. If I follow every point, all right, 2 to the right, 4 down. 2 to the right, 4 down. All right, 15 through 18, this is where we're going to struggle a little. It's still, the instructions are still the same. Write a rule to describe each transformation. So to begin with, I have to write translation. I know it's translation because that's the only thing we're doing. And I'm going to say I did the same to every x. So I'm going to follow an x, any x that I want, from m to m prime. Originally was 2. The only thing I can do is add or subtract. So I'm just going to say, okay, in order for 2 to become 0, I'm going to go x minus 2. I'm going to subtract 2 to make it 0. All right, I started with 2. And if you notice, 3 minus 2 gives me 1. 0 minus 2 gives me negative 2. And 0 minus 2 gives me negative 2. So yeah, I subtracted 2 from every x. Now let's take a look at y. I have a forward, and it has to become 2. I can only add or subtract. Forward, I have to make it 2. So I'm going to say, well, let me subtract 2 on that one, right? Because 4 minus 2 is 2. And I double check everything. Negative 1 minus 2, it works. 4 minus 2, 0 minus 2. So I subtracted 2 from every y as well. Let's take a look at question number 16. Don't forget, once again, when you type it, let me emphasize, there's a space after translation, and there's a space after the comma. All right, let's take a look at number 16. We're dealing with translation only. I know that's easy to do right now. I'm going to follow a point. From forward, it has to become negative 1. In order for 4 to become negative 1, I have to subtract 5. I'm going to check that on every x. I'm going to check that it works, and it does. So I'm just going to write translation x minus 5. I'm subtracting 5 to every x. Now, what am I doing to y? I don't have to start with k. I can start with any point. I'll look at L. That one's easier. 4, I have to make it 3. 4 minus 1 is 3. So let me check if it works for every y. I'm subtracting 1 from every y. And I notice that they all work. So I'm just going to say, okay, cool. y minus 1. Let's take a look at number 17. I'm going to follow a point on x. From 0 to become 4. So that's added forward. I double check that it works for every x, and it does. So far I have translation x plus 4. Now for my y values, let me focus on y now. What do I do to my y values? I think it would be easy to follow this one. -5, I have to make it 2. In order for -5 to become positive 2, let me add 7. It works on all of them, so let me call that y plus 7. Now let's take a look at number 18. Start from any point you want. I'm going to follow my point S. Forward, it has to become 1. In order for it to become 1, I have to subtract 3. Check that it works for every x value. And it works. Okay, so I have the translation. Let me do this as x minus 3. Now let me find out what am I doing to y. I notice that I don't do anything. Don't do anything then. Just type in y. Right? If I take a glance, I didn't change the y value from any point. So this is how we write the rules.